Great, thank you. Good morning, everybody. I'm going to call this meeting to order. This is the Friday, June 12th, 2020 meeting of the School Building Project Committee. Let me start with a roll call. Ken Aries.
Here.
Brian Baer.
Here.
I think Allison's joining us in a little bit. I haven't seen her yet. Chris Coleman's not able to make it. Sarah Cronin.
Here.
John Cummings.
Here.
I think Charlie is maybe still sick because I don't see him. He wasn't feeling well last night. So, and Pam is not joining us. Abby Hanscom.
Here.
Nancy Hyde.
Here.
Lema Jean-Baptiste.
Here.
Josepha Jowdy.
Here.
Carol Lewis.
Here.
Michelle Miller, I think, is still trying to join. Tony Mullen.
Here.
Emily Parks.
Here.
Kate Scales.
Here.
And Maya Plotkin is here. Okay. I'd like to recognize the live stream to provide real-time public access to the activities of the School Building Committee. It's available online at www.westwood.k12.ma.us/live. The meeting is also being recorded for later broadcast on Westwood Media Center's platforms. So thank you to Westwood Media Center and to the district's tech guru, Steve. Okay, so I'm going to move into the chair's report. Just a quick update on project and process. As you remember, last week the evaluation subcommittee provided you with a recommended option, which we are all still weighing. And we also held a community forum to present that option to the community. I think we got a good turnout. We got, I think, about 50 people at that forum and a few good questions about it. I think overall it seems that people were pretty supportive of the recommendation. So I was happy with how the community forum went and continue to be very happy with the engagement that we've been getting from the town of Westwood. So that's great news, particularly in this setting where there's other distractions. And the purpose, I wanted to sort of frame up, I'm going to kind of move into the discussion. I just kind of want to frame up the purpose of today's meeting. This is really to look at sustainability options, but the bigger picture here is that, as you know, we need to submit something called the PSR, which is the Preferred Schematic Report, to the MSBA. And in that, we'll have the two sort of components of that, or major components, I should say, are one, our recommended option, or the option that the SBC approves if we approve it next Friday. And two, we have to provide the MSBA with something called a not to exceed budget. And what this budget is basically a number, a cost number that we're saying to the MSBA, this is pretty much the maximum amount that this project will cost. We've looked at everything we want to study. We've cost estimated those options out. We have, whether it's a baseline, and we also have other options we're looking at. And based on what we feel we want to study, this number, this final not to exceed cost number, is the maximum amount that we feel this project is going to cost. Recognizing we haven't gotten to schematic design, and that costs could change, but what the MSBA doesn't want, I think, is for us to tell them, okay, we want to study X, Y, and Z, and then we get through schematic design and we say, oh, by the way, we actually also want to include A and B in the project. I think they're really trying to get us to scope out the project. So as you know, we've gotten baseline costs from Doran Whittier, and what we really need to understand today is what that outside maximum number is. That will depend a fair amount on what sustainability options we want to study in the schematic design. And I want to make clear, if we agree on certain things in this not to exceed number, it doesn't mean we have to include them in the project. It just means we're going to study them in schematic design, which is the next 7 months. And so the purpose of the meeting today is to really look at a very high level. We're not going to get into detail because I want to save us some time, and I also think that we don't need to get into that detail yet. We're not making sustainability decisions today, but we're just trying to understand what are the various options on the table for sustainability, how much do they cost, and what will they make the not to exceed number look like. The Sustainability Committee has looked at these options, has discussed them, and has actually recommended to move all of the options forward for further study. So you'll see as we get into the presentation what the various options are, how much they cost, and what that does to this sort of not to exceed number. But again, this is, you know, up for discussion. We have information today. We've got our consultants on the phone as well. So we can get further into the sustainability options if people are not comfortable with that not to exceed number at the end of the presentation. If people think it's too high, if they're wondering why are we studying this option, we'll never, ever, ever agree to this. That's the kind of discussion we should have now. I don't think we need to get into the ins and outs of the sustainability options. Again, we're not making sustainability decisions. All we're deciding today is, do we want to carry these options forward for further study? So, does anyone have any questions about what our purpose of today is? Nope. No. Okay. So moving into the discussion, I am going to turn it over to Doran Whittier. They have a short presentation on the sustainability design options. So Rob, is that you?
Yep. Thank you. Let me just...
And Rob and Don and Chin, feel free to correct me if I mischaracterize what we're doing today at all.
Yeah, no, I think that's right on target. Can everybody see my screen?
Yep.
Okay. So today's agenda, we'll be talking about the purpose of the meeting, which Maya just went through, the Sustainability Subcommittee recommendations, and then a couple other site considerations that we've talked about, but really no formal decision was made. So as Maya mentioned, you know, what should we include in the budget for this preferred schematic report option? Reviewing the recommendations from the Sustainability Subcommittee and then these other considerations. So just going down the list, these are the items that the Sustainability Subcommittee reviewed and is recommending to move forward with into schematic design. So the priority has always been you know, achieving the 2 percentage points from MSBA, and in order to do that, we need to achieve this 20% above the new energy code, which is a new the new energy code will be coming out this year. So it has raised the bar quite substantially over the current energy code. The second item is exploring the fossil fuel free options. We looked at two, what we're calling tiers. There are essentially two options for heating and cooling the building that are alternates to using a natural gas fired condensing, high performance boiler, but these offer fossil fuel free options. So the tier 1 is the water source heat pump, which would add approximately 1.1 million to the base project cost, and or tier 2, which is using a ground source heat pump, which is using geothermal wells, and that would add 3.5 million. So when we looked at this with the Sustainability Subcommittee, there's some additional investigation work that would be needed to really talk through which of these options makes the most sense. One component of that is a life cycle cost analysis. So we've completed a simple payback cost analysis through Thornton Tomasetti, who's done some preliminary analysis on the annual operating costs. But we haven't gotten into the overall maintenance costs and integrated that. That's really something that happens during schematic design. So that's one of the reasons why the group decided to push it a little bit further to continue to look at that. The other piece is a geothermal test well would need to be done just to confirm is it even feasible? How deep do we need to go? How many wells are needed? So that this number can actually get fine-tuned. So, so those are two components that the committee felt seemed to make sense to continue to look at. So when we look at the tiers, this is the updated energy analysis that Thornton Tomasetti has done. If you look here at these bar graphs here, for example, this is the baseline option, which is the natural gas, condensing boiler with still high performance exterior envelope elements to meet the new energy code. Tier 1 is the water source heat pump. Tier 2 is the geothermal. And so you can see at the bottom here the savings from the baseline in terms of energy use and how they compare to one another. This incorporates 100% air conditioning in the building. This was an element that we had talked about and modified, considering that this is something that the school district might be considering. The other piece is the potential for increased use, either during the summer or during the year, considering that this is going to be the most efficient building in the district. And so that's where some of these numbers have gone up since the last time we looked at them. With the geothermal, I think previously it was about 20 EUI of 29. So we're still inching closer we're not too very far from that. The other piece to this is that as we continue to work on this in the schematic design phase, we can fine tune some of these numbers a bit more as we get into more detail. In terms of the next item, which was the timber framing discussion. So there's two elements, as we've talked about in the past, of reducing carbon emissions. One is the operational carbon, which is what we've been talking about in terms of natural gas, for example, and going to a fossil fuel-free option. The other piece of carbon use in terms of greenhouse gas emissions is embodied carbon. And one element of that is looking at timber framing. Does it make sense to consider the use of timber framing construction instead of steel, or and then also looking at that in whether do we just do a portion of the building? So that's the partial timber framing piece, where we might explore incorporating the entry, the corridor, the cafeteria, some sort of demonstration type elements to make an effort towards that, or do we go comprehensive and do all the classroom wings, for example? We would still have like the gym and the maintenance areas that would still probably be the structural steel framing system under these scenarios, but option B would be would add a large majority of the building to be the timber framing. And so this is these are a couple examples of what we're talking about when we say partial and comprehensive. So on the left, these are, the idea is that, we might explore looking at integrating timber into like an entry area. This is not necessarily looking like this, but this is just one example where you can, see the connections. Again, this is solid, either solid wood or engineered wood framing. This is not just, stick built. And then, excuse me. And then, this is an example of like a cafeteria, for example, where you can do kind of something special and really get a sense of the whole timber framing idea. On the right are more examples of what classrooms or classroom wings may look like. As you can see, this type of construction has some acoustical panels that would need to get added. For example, you have a little bit more of a exposed elements of mechanical systems, sprinkler piping, lighting, and so forth that are integrated. Again, we're not necessarily asking the committee to make a decision on this today. It's really just kind of outlining this, what we would do in the next phase, as soon as we start schematic design, is, look at the pluses and minuses. We've developed a spreadsheet of a matrix, an evaluation matrix, that there's quite a few items on it for discussion, and we just kind of ran out of time to get into that at this level. And by pushing this into the next phase would allow us a little bit more flexibility with material choices and discussion on how we might integrate these elements, and how far do we go. And then the last two items are whether to consider 100% air conditioning throughout the whole entire building, or go with partial air conditioning with the dehumidification ventilation. So the partial AC would be for example, in the administrative wing, potentially in the special education classrooms. Doesn't make sense to integrate it into a few other classrooms if other classrooms are going to be used during the summertime. And part of that evaluation, the group discussed visiting other schools that have the dehumidification ventilation system and the partial AC, and review with them, how the system is working, if they've had summer classes with that type of system, and so forth. So we're looking to set up those tours. I think we're looking at the first week in August. And so a final determination can be made on that. And then the last piece is the rainwater cistern irrigation. This is something it's very easy to add on or delete at numerous points in the project. As of right now, the group recommended to continue to look at it. So this kind of summarizes again what the subcommittee is recommending. We've included some decision dates in here when these decisions really need to be made. So on the 19th, which is next Friday, if the committee decides to move ahead with continuing to look at these, as the subcommittee has recommended, then we would also like to have an authorization to move ahead with performing a geothermal test well. We're expecting to have a proposal ready by early next week for the committee to consider. And so that is one item that we would be talking about next Friday if the committee determines to go ahead with this. And then August 25th would be a decision on the natural gas versus one of the fossil fuel-free options. And so in between now and then, we would be performing that life cycle cost analysis, looking at those two options and potentially another variant of those combinations. And then the timber framing, we would want to have a decision by July 23rd, which is the next the next building committee meeting. That is an important decision to make earlier than the other option, because it has a significant impact on the layout of the structural framing system, and that's really the bones of the drawings that we'll be putting together. And so between now and then, we would meet again with the sustainability subcommittee and get into a deeper dive into the timber framing discussion. And then August 25th for the air conditioning, and that would allow time for a visit to the schools in the first week in August, and that could potentially be an alternate. Ideally, a decision would be made for sure one way or another in August, but if not, it's something that can be we can indicate as an alternate to the project later on. And then rainwater cistern irrigation. This ideally would be August 25th, but that again also could potentially be an alternate if that's desired. So looking at the overall cost, we talked about the $83 million as the baseline project. And then these are the add-on costs that would incorporate the all of the elements. So for example, this number, the 3.5, includes the geothermal, which is the more expensive of the two options. The timber framing includes both the partial and the classroom wing. And again, this would be allowing the most flexibility for us to review and consider in the next month or two. And then this is all 100% air conditioning, and then the rainwater cistern irrigation piece for a total of 90.3. And then the last two items to think about is the 7v7 soccer field. So in the project, in the baseline right now, we have 11v11 soccer field and a Little League baseball field. On our site plans, we've also been showing where a 7v7 soccer field could go. But the price of that has not been included in the baseline, and because it was up for discussion whether this is something that the school district wants to include or not. And then there was a question early on about district bus parking, and does it make sense to include parking lot for, it was like 17 buses. And we did look at that, and we did look at potential places to locate that on the site. The number came in at $800,000. And so I know that Emily and Maya have discussed that. I don't know if Emily, you want to speak to that at all before I go any further, if there's any other discussion on any of these.
I'm happy to speak to the bus issue. So, I mean, I think it's really just a question of whether or not we want to incur that cost. The situation right now at the high school is that the high school is at its peak enrollment number. It's been sort of hovering around just over 1,000 students now for the last couple of years. And during that time period, we have not had enough parking for all of the students at the high school. And the impact of that has been that kids have been parking in the neighborhoods across, across from the high school, which is, clearly a concern for our neighbors. I do think that as the enrollment starts to go down, that problem is going to be alleviated. I mean, for years and years, we did not have this issue. So I just kind of wanted to frame that up, that I think the problem will get better. And so I don't know that we want to spend $800,000 for the additional, for the bus parking to move to Hanlon. I think it is, I realize that we're making like a 70-year decision here though. So, I don't know what's going to happen to enrollment in the future. If we have sort of a cyclical enrollment curve at some point again, I think we'll experience another pocket of time when it becomes a problem. So that I think is the decision point.
Emily, is there any advantage, leave aside the 800,000, if you had in a perfect world, is there any advantage to the high school Hanlon vis-a-vis operating costs or just the way the routes run, independent of any costs, independent of this decision?
Right. I'm going to ask Lemma about that. I think she has more insight into bus routes than I do.
So I think locating there has some advantages and disadvantages depending on the route, but it's always going to be better for us to locate our buses in one place when they start the morning. And so I'm not sure we can, so the net is neutral, I would say.
Okay. Thank you.
Much. One other thought I had is that the parking of the parking lot probably involves removal of some more trees. So that's a factor just in terms of thinking of the school in the woods and the aesthetics around what we want there. So maybe this could be another consideration. But I agree with Emily that the enrollment issue will resolve itself for a while at least, and it may come back and as the cycle, changes again.
Yeah. Okay. A lot of kids won't have licenses anyway because they can't get them this year.
So I don't know if where you'd like to go in terms of the discussion. I can go back to the previous slide.
Hey, Rob,
Yes.
one question. The fields, are they natural fields or are they artificial turf fields?
These are priced out as natural fields.
Yeah,
What's the delta?
It could be another, $1 million maybe.
For all the fields that are there?
I don't price it out, so don't hold me to it.
John, this is Chen. I want to interject a little bit. It's not unusual to see $1 million per field. Depends on the size of the field.
So I guess I have a question. Maybe it's back on the other slide, Rob. So what I'm struggling a little bit with is the timing of all these, because like, at least from my view, and this is just me, I'd like to be able to take a holistic look at all these as opposed to saying, we got to make this decision today, this decision. I don't know. I struggle a little bit with all these different timings because I'd like to get the complete picture when we're talking about adding, additional $7 million and what the trade-offs are. But maybe that's just me.
So I think the timing, so in terms of the outside date here is the August 25th. The earliest date's July 23rd. The July 23rd is because the timber framing clearly affects the design more significantly going forward. And the August 25th is because at that point we need to know what systems we're pricing out, we're putting in place. Mike, and maybe Rob, you can speak to whether by July 23rd, we'll have enough information about the fossil fuel free options to be able to make a decision on those. So that, because the AC, the options 4 and 5 are alternates. You can swap those in and out at pretty much, not any time in the project, but certainly you can do it after August 25th. I think the real issue here are numbers 2 and 3, the fossil fuel free options and the timber framing. And those are the decisions probably that need to be made this summer by this committee.
Right.
Go ahead.
May I, in terms of, sorry, but just question, in terms of, I get your point that some decisions don't need to be made till later, but I also understand Tony's point in that it's going to depend on, it's all about cost here. So if we decide on some now and then later we realize, well, that's really just going to put us over, then maybe we're ruling out other options. Do you know what I mean?
I do. I'm not, I think in some ways we're a little bit hampered by the process, and that I don't think we're going to have the complete flexibility that we want. I think that, as I said, 2 and 3 seem to be, now with number 4, with the partial AC versus 100%, included in the baseline price, this $83 million, is air conditioning for the administration offices and for special education classrooms. So that's already in the baseline. So the question is, do we want to do the entire building with AC, or can we use this dehumidification system? That, we need to get a little more information on. We need to do a little bit of tours, building tours, to see how is it working in August. What does it feel like when it's 85 degrees out and they've got this dehumidification system? But it's not, that to me is an important decision, but I don't think it's we can bring that in or bring that out. I'm just comforted that in the baseline in the 83 million, we do have rooms that do have full AC already. So I think if we can make the decisions on the fossil fuel free option and the timber framing, I don't think the budget, yes, 1.3 million is a lot for the AC, but we should have that information by August 25th. And, we can kind of look at 2 and 3, knowing that maybe we'll have this additional 1.3 cost. The rainwater cistern, smaller dollars. I'm not sure of, we haven't really discussed it at length at the Sustainability Committee. I'm not so sure of the benefit of that one. But to me, 2 and 3 are the big decisions.
Yeah, if I could add one thing, the AC and the geothermal are somewhat tied together in terms of a decision, because the amount of air conditioning that you incorporate may also dictate the number of wells that we build in order to satisfy the amount of cooling that the building would need. So if you have less cooling needs, then you might have less wells that be constructed. And so while we can lay that out in terms of options for review and say, okay, in a partial AC, this is what the geothermal would cost. In a full AC, this is what the geothermal would cost. But they're somewhat tied together in that sense.
Yeah, and go ahead.
Hi, it's Ken. Can I just weigh in on the AC portion of it? I would push for the 100% AC. I just know over the years, and I know Emma and everybody can weigh in on this, everybody's looking for AC. And I think, it limits us if we don't put it in all the classrooms. If we get a student that needs it and we try to add it at a later point, it does create problems. And I think it's going to limit, and Abby can attest to this too, that it limits the flexibility of moving classrooms around and stuff as we get going in the school.
This is Chen, just for clarification, that in the base design is the dehumidification or partial AC, basically that you do have dehumidification, and then it just said the temperature will not go down as far as the so-called 100% AC, so that you're not, the building is not without AC in the base building. This is just clarification. Rob, you guys can add more information on that.
Let me just follow up on that. So for example, between September and May, you're going to feel like the building is fully air conditioned with the dehumidification ventilation system. It's not going to feel any different, and actually might feel nicer because you don't have this blast of cold air. It's just taking that humidification and ventilation out of the space. The question is when you get to the hotter months through the summer, where the temperature and the humidity rises up to a certain point where that dehumidification just can't reach those temperatures. That's when that 100% AC throughout the entire building is a decision, or is it certain spaces in the building that are just used in the summer? That's really
Can I weigh in? I think that I agree with Ken. I think that to not put the AC in now would be a mistake. I think climate is changing, and when we haven't done it in the buildings that we previously did, I think it was a mistake. My 2 cents.
Yeah, I agree with Joseph. I was going to bring that up. If this is a long-term building decision, and we don't know the effects of warming and climate change, and it would seem like we have to plan for that if the district plans to use the building in the summer.
Can I just add in, as the student services perspective, the district does plan to use this building extensively in the summer, and from a ADA access point of view, I really need the facility itself and all its components, auditorium, cafeteria, gymnasium, to be accessible. And I would see this as an accessibility decision as well as a building decision.
Could I just intercede just quickly? And I think Maya did a great job of framing what we're trying to do today. So given what I'm hearing about AC, this obviously seems to me we would want to preserve that option for the future. Yes. And decide it later on. But and in general, with all of these, I think what we're trying to say is that unless there's a groundswell on this meeting to not do something, like an overwhelming consensus, we would suggest that you include these in the not to exceed moving forward. it's not what the project, this is not the cost the town will vote on at all. This is simply preserving the option to study these further and, as the deadlines that are being presented. So I just want people like getting too much into the weeds around them, because that's why we're going to have these continuing meetings to go over them, because really we're just trying to preserve the option to study them moving forward.
And Tim, thank you. That was helpful framing. And I think just to sort of organize us a little bit, why don't we take these sort of one by one, and to Tim's point, decide whether or not we're comfortable moving them forward. So the first one here is, as we've said before, the MSBA gives you two additional reimbursement points if you are 20% above the energy code. So the 83 million baseline takes that into account and will provide us with those 2 additional points. Does anybody have any objection to seeking those 2 additional points?
I mean, I'm just going to state again for the record, I do have concerns about having a very dark building when there's only 25% window to kind of wall. That's lower than a lot of the comparable schools we've looked at. So there may be nothing we can do about it, but I do have that continued concern. We're going to spend $90 million on a new building, and it's going to be a dark building.
We can continue to look at that, Tony. When we start to develop the design, that is not a hard and fast number. We do have flexibility in the window to wall ratio, and continue to look at that. So if that's the desire to, if we do the layout of the windows and show you what the impact is internally, and you say, well, let's add some more windows. We can certainly add some more windows, and it will impact overall.
Thank you. Thank you. No,
and I believe we do also have a daylight consultant on board. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thanks for that.
Okay. Thanks, Tony. Anything else on number 1? Any objection to moving the 83 million forward? Nope.
No.
Okay. Number 2, fossil fuel-free options. So the 3.5 million, we should be clear, is for the geothermal option. The tier 1 option is less expensive. I can't remember the exact number, but it is less expensive. So we put the outside number in here, the 3.5 million, which is the more expensive geothermal option. Again, we're looking just for a not to exceed number. That's why we went with the more expensive one. Is anyone objecting to moving forward this 3.5 million number for fossil fuel free heating systems, to explore that in schematic design? No? Okay. So the third one is timber framing. And as Rob mentioned, this is really, it will actually impact the design aesthetic of the building. Partial framing versus full framing. We added in here, so 300,000 is for the partial framing, where, Rob had mentioned in his presentation, maybe the entry, the cafeteria, just certain portions of the building. The 2 million is to also do the classroom. So combined, you'd have a $2.3 million. Again, this is something we've looked at. The benefit to timber framing is to reduce embodied carbon. It's a materials issue. It's not an operational issue. There won't be operational cost savings with timber framing, but there will be emission savings. So again, outside number of 2.3 million. Is anybody objecting to moving the $2.3 million forward for the not to exceed number?
I have a question. Brian, I remember a while back when we started talking about timber, you had touched on the possibility of a combination. Do you see leaving open to do timber framing through the whole thing the way to go at this point, or is now a time to say we should consider it, but only partially? Do you have an opinion on that?
You're asking me, Nancy?
Yeah, I am. Because I thought it was you who said something early on, like, well, maybe it's a combination.
Yeah, I think Rob agreed with me. My input would be that moving forward with this, there's probably a lot of options within this range. And you'll notice from some of those photos, and Rob, please add to this, that it's really the timber framing, the large structural members they're looking at now, and then other things you see like timber ceilings and things, that's more for the aesthetics. So I think there's a lot of options in between, but I think they're mainly talking about the structural system here.
So it's better to keep the full amount in now and keep our options open for further consideration?
I would like to see that explored in design. I think there'll be a lot of price tag options in between. I think the structural system is one cost, but as I said, some of those photos showed a lot of aesthetics with a lot of wood in it, and that's, I think, beyond this decision, but Rob can add to that maybe.
Yeah, so, up to now, all of our work has really been very conceptual because we've been looking at, 15 options and then now 7 options. And so it's hard for us to really spend a lot of time on saying, well, how much timber framing should actually be incorporated? So, here we've just kind of taken a square footage of these different spaces and said, okay, let's allocate this square footage, for timber framing, and this is what the value is. By including the full amount now to consider, and now we can focus on this one option and say, okay, where does it make sense? What would it look like? And kind of dive into it a little bit more. So this allows a little bit more flexibility in our design process. I think in our minds, we're likely headed towards not a full, comprehensive approach. But by pushing this into the next phase so that we can focus on this one design, will allow us to have that flexibility in the material and design choices that we make.
Yeah, I tend to agree with Rob that I think we're probably headed towards, if we use timber, it's in some of the special areas. It would seem hard to me to maybe justify to, on a vote, spending a lot of extra money for just bringing the aesthetics of wood into the building. I mean, maybe in some special areas, but throughout that might be tough if we're looking at a big number overall.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
And if I could add, just, aside from reducing the embodied carbon, this idea of doing a portion or portions of the building in heavy timber allows for teaching opportunities and creating demonstration areas. So the building itself can be used as a teaching tool to the students in the community.
Yeah. And just a reminder, again, we're not locking ourselves into anything. And it's better to have a higher number as you're not to exceed, because the MSBA will not be very happy with this if we come in with a low number and then start adding to it after the fact. So if we're having any questions, we should err on the side of more rather than less, if that makes sense. All right, any other discussion on timber? Is anybody opposed to moving it forward, the full 2.3 million, just for study purposes and schematic design? No? Okay. So number 4, I think we talked about this already. It sounds like everybody's on board with moving the 1.3 forward for the 100% AC. Is anybody not on board with that? Nope. Okay. Then rainwater cistern irrigation. We didn't talk too much about this. It's a 0.2 million, $200,000 add, can be an alternate. Rob, do you just want to speak very quickly as to what this is?
Yeah, so this is taking your rainwater and storing it into an underground container, if you will, and that then can be used to water most likely some of the landscaping, maybe some of the fields, some of the time. It won't likely be able to handle 100% irrigation of all the fields 100% of the time. So it'll undoubtedly be needed to be supplemented by municipal water anyway. The idea behind this is simply, do we want to consider using less of our municipal water supply to provide irrigation for elements on the site, and really that's what this is.
So Rob, this is Ken. So can we tie town water into the system so when we don't have put new fields in, we don't want them to die.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, it will be on town water.
Okay.
Is there any oh, go ahead.
I was just wondering if these systems, if anyone knows if these systems require a lot of ongoing maintenance, cleaning, et cetera, that would be beyond, I think, what the district does now.
Yeah, there is some additional maintenance involved because now you've got other, pieces of storage and filtration that's incorporated into that. So there is some additional maintenance associated with
it. The maintenance is less when using it for irrigation than it would be for potable water source. It's a more simplified system that requires less maintenance.
Mm-hmm.
All right, anything else on rainwater? Any questions? Is there any objection to moving this forward as the not to exceed? Okay, so far we're at 90.3 million as our not to exceed. This is all of these decisions that we've made are in line with the recommendations from the Sustainability Committee. And so we just have a couple more to discuss, specifically the 7v7 soccer field and the district bus parking. Again, we're not locking ourselves into these. We're just looking at these for further study. They would bring the total up from 90.3. If we did them both, it would bring it up clearly from 90.3 to 91.4 as a not to exceed number. So just taking them one by one, 7v7 soccer field. How do people feel about including and studying that? As Rob noted, it was on the site plan, but we made it clear in the presentations to the community that it was not part of the base building cost and that it would be an additional option, an alternate.
Also,
so how do people feel about the 7v7 soccer field?
Can I have quite one point of clarification? So in the base case right now, it would be the 11v11, the Little League baseball, but not this. Is that fair?
Correct. Correct. So already we're getting the 11v11, which we don't currently have at Hanlon. So the town is already getting one additional field. This would have two fields.
I mean, it's small money at this point. I mean, we can decide not to do it later.
All right. Any objection to moving the field study forward? Nope. Okay. And then the district bus parking. This is probably a little bit more. Do we want to do this?
Well, I mean, what I heard from the superintendent Lemma is maybe not. So, given the demographics, so I mean, if that's the recommendations, I mean, I'd say no, but I don't know what others think.
I mean, I have to say at this point, as I look at the cost and things that we're considering, I would put this lower on the priority list than some of the sustainability options.
Okay.
What about others? I'm hearing maybe we should not move district bus parking forward.
It just seems that in this process, again, if you're only considering and you're not making any final decision, why? I guess my question is, why wouldn't you move some of these things forward anyway?
The bus.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say the bus parking does have an impact on the layout of the fields and the other parking. So if this is something that you do want to incorporate, then we would need to likely revise our site plan to accommodate that, and then talk about where it's going to go and that sort of thing. So there's some time involved in redesigning the site to accommodate that. If that's not something that's interested in, then it allows less, I guess, design work. If it is something you're interested in, and it's just one of these things that's good to know one way or another, whether you want to include it or not, because it'll impact. If you decide later, let's not do the bus parking, then that might require us to redesign the site plan all over again.
So Rob, oh gosh, sorry, Carol.
So that would have more impact than a soccer field.
Yes.
Rob, do either of these, at this point, do you think either of these affect the layout and positioning of the building on the site?
The soccer field, no, because we've already kind of indicated that on the site plan as it currently stands. And I don't think the district bus parking would, but the district bus parking is different, is a different animal, because you've got to think about, are these buses close to the gauge street so that they can, or close to the road so that they can have easy access in and out, or does it mean that it should be up closer to the building because it's away from fields, and but then it's a farther distance to go, or if you want to incorporate the 7B soccer field, maybe does the soccer field go up where the building is and the bus parking is down below by Gay Street? It kind of just adds one more of these components into the mix, enough so that it's potential that the building might need to get moved back. I mean, I can't say for sure right now, because right now we've designed it without that in there.
So, and Rob, to Tony's point about trying to balance costs and timing of decisions, when would we need to make the district bus parking? It sounds like fairly early on, if it could conceivably affect the siting of the building.
Yeah, I mean, ideally, this would be something that would be done very early on. Yeah, maybe by the next meeting, for sure. But ideally, it would be nice to make decisions, on the 19th.
Can I weigh in on this? I don't think you want to be moving your buses over to this site. I think it's going to be a tremendous disruption to an area of town that will already experience quite a change when it's a school that houses 500 to 600 students. There's going to be a lot of traffic impact, and to have the buses in and out of there as their central hub on a day-to-day basis, I think it's a decision that you do not want to include this. I think from a long-term support of this project, this could be the kind of thing that could be harmful.
I also think that I don't think this was actually an element of the project when we started discussing. I think this sort of came as a result of sort of roundtable discussions. So I don't think, when we conceived of this project, I don't think this was even something that we were thinking we would have at this site. It was sort of more of a, so I tend to agree with Nancy. I think that we're burdening the neighborhood already with the new construction and the bigger building. And even though it will be set back, it will be a much bigger building. And I just think throwing 17 buses somewhere on that site might be a little too much to ask the neighborhood to bear.
Ken, I agree with that.
Yeah, I do as well. I was going to add, there's an efficiency to having the buses near the district offices as well. And it's a security issue.
Right. Because it's not just the buses, right? It's also the trailer, the operational trailer that they work out of, and that needs to be near the buses. So it's actually bigger than just the 17 buses.
Yep. Right. So it sounds like a terrible idea, and why it's never tossed up there in the first place.
I mean, I think we saw an opportunity to look at it, right, and say what would it cost and what would it. But I think just sort of talking it through, and especially at a $800,000 price tag, it's almost $1 million.
Yep.
So I don't know. Does anyone feel strongly that we should move it forward? No? All right, so I think we're gonna drop the district bus parking idea. John Cummings, you okay with that?
Oh yeah, it was just, it's one of those things, if you don't think about it and ask it ahead of time, then it's one of those hindsights, oh geez, the high school's overwhelmed, why didn't we do this then? So we've vetted it. I mean, as a neighbor that lives within 500 yards of that parking lot, not having 37 buses in there, I'm all right with it. But if I didn't throw it out there, I'd be remiss because I live closest. I think
it was actually a really, really important discussion to have, because we could have gotten that at town meeting.
Sorry, John, I didn't know it was your idea. I didn't mean to diss you on that one.
Oh, I don't mind.
No, I think John's really
good try.
No more buses driving through. Okay, so I think I think where we're at now is we're at a 90.6 not to exceed number. And everybody is comfortable with that? Because that's the number that we'll put in the PSR, and that's the number that we'll vote next week.
Just a general question. How does the MSBA, so we're putting in a maximum here, but that's likely to increase with inflation and unknown costs. So how does the MSBA deal with that?
Well, this already includes escalation to the planned construction date. So we wouldn't expect that shouldn't, I mean, who knows what's happening with this economy, but could go the other way. So we're not, they will, as I think has been pointed out, it's not a hard cap. I mean, if there's a reason, like if we find out doing more geotech that there's a bigger ledge issue than we've been thinking, I mean, there's reasons that we can go to them and justify more, but they just don't want you to put out a project in preferred schematic that hasn't been really well thought out about what the scope is.
Okay. I think that's it for this discussion. Is that right, Rob? We didn't miss anything?
Yep, that's it.
Okay.
The only thing, maybe we're going to touch on it here, but is just like what information, quickly, maybe just, Rob, we could talk about what we're planning on doing to help make these decisions on July 23rd. What's the code of information that we're sort of working on presenting, and on August 20, in case people say, well, I'd like to hear about more, something else.
Yeah, so we are planning to, I think we talked about establishing some other dates for the sustainability subcommittee. And so we are planning to meet again. Remember we set a date, the 8th of July, I think we were looking at for the sustainability subcommittee meeting. And then another one in
August.
On the 18th
yeah,
of August.
we haven't, to the people on the subcommittee, we haven't told you that yet, but those are the dates we're looking at.
But yeah, those are the opportunities for us to dive into that a little bit more. So, we'll continue to gather information. If there's specific questions that the subcommittee is looking to have answered and resolved, that would be helpful for us to know, to make sure that we address those in time for those meetings.
Yeah, and I think from a cost perspective, what we were really looking to see is not just the capital costs, what it would cost to install or the systems, but also the ongoing maintenance costs, the operational costs, and do sort of a look ahead, like a 10-year look ahead or something like that, so we can understand the true value of the system.
Right. So that is a key component that we are working on it. We will be able to provide.
Okay, great. Okay. So I'm conscious of time. I want to try and get us out of here relatively close to 9. So just moving on, the next thing is we need to think of a design aesthetic working group. So this is a working group that will, there no voting, it's just really to just sort of guide the architects in one direction or another in terms of design and aesthetics of the building. So I think the best way to do this is, if you have an interest in being on that working group, let me know. And we'll sort of try and get a cross section of people across this committee, and maybe next week we can kind of finalize who the group is. But just shoot me an email if you're interested in being on that committee, and we can go from there. Again, it's not a committee, it's a working group, just to be clear. And then the last thing in discussion items is we circulated a list of the meetings for 2020 and 2021, and we do have to work in the summer. I apologize, but we have a lot of work to get done this summer. So we do have meetings throughout the summer, at once a month in the summer. If you have any issues with those dates, I think we're going to try and vote them today. So did everyone get a chance to take a look? Does anyone have any issues with the dates? These are most likely virtual meetings. So even if you're in, the Cape, you can still attend. Exactly, John. So are there any issues with the dates? Hearing none, I will move on. Okay, I'm going to go into the action items. So first is the approval of the 2021 meeting calendar. As was set out in the agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the meeting dates, proposed meeting dates?
So moved.
Can I get a set? Excellent. All right, I'm going to do a roll call. Ken Aries.
Yes.
Brian Bair.
Yes.
Allison Borchers.
Yes.
Chris Coleman is not here. Sarah Cronin.
Yes.
John Cummings.
Yes.
Charlie Donahue is not here. Pam is not here. Abby Hanscom.
Yes.
Nancy Hyde.
Yes.
Lema Jean-Baptiste.
Yes.
Josepha Jowdy.
Yes.
Carol Lewis.
Yes.
So Michelle Miller's on the phone but can't vote. Tony, I believe, had to drop. Emily Parks.
Yes.
And Kate Scales.
Yes.
Great. Thank you. Okay. Approval of the May 29, 2020 School Building Committee meeting minutes. Is there any discussion about the meeting minutes? None? Okay. Can I get a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right. Roll call. Ken.
Yes.
Brian.
Yes.
Allison.
Yes.
Chris not here. Sarah.
Yes.
John.
Yes.
Charlie isn't here. Pam isn't here. Abby.
Yes.
Nancy. Nancy?
Yes.
Thank you. Lema.
Yes.
Josepha.
Yes.
Carol.
Yes.
Michelle's on the mute. Tony's not here. Emily.
Yes.
And Kate. Did we may have lost Kate. Yeah, I think we did. Okay, she had to go. And Maya Plotkin votes yes. Next item is approval of the May 27, 2020 evaluation criteria subcommittee minutes. This is the vote by members of the subcommittee only. And I've lost that group. Sorry, apologies. Okay, I don't think I have a list of the subcommittee members.
You've got Ken, John, myself, you, and Emily.
Okay, thank you, Nancy. Ken.
Yes.
John.
Yes.
Nancy.
Yes.
Emily.
Yes.
Brian. Oh no, Brian, are you on it? No, you're not. Okay, and Maya. I vote yes. Okay, I think that's it. Did I miss anyone on that committee?
Maya, we need a motion for that.
I'd like a motion. All right. Second.
I think we can keep the vote. I just need a motion.
All right, so we have Nancy moved, John seconded, and we have our vote. Okay, thank you guys.
Good catch, John.
It takes a village. Thank you guys. And now we just need to accept the meeting minutes. I think we can do this all in one vote. So I need a motion to accept the meeting minutes of the April 16, 2020 Evaluation Criteria Subcommittee, the May 1st, 2020 Sustainability Subcommittee, and the May 27, 2020 Evaluation Criteria Subcommittee.
I move we accept.
Second.
Second.
Okay, roll call. Ken.
Yes on all.
Brian.
Yes.
Allison.
Yes.
Chris not here. Sarah.
Yes.
John.
Yes.
Charlie and Pam are not here. Abby.
Yes.
Nancy.
Yes.
Lema.
Yes.
Josepha.
Yes.
Carol.
Yes.
Michelle's on mute. Tony's not here. Emily.
Yes.
Kate isn't here. And Maya Plotkin votes yes. Motion carried. Finally, we have payments for invoices. We need to approve those. So we have invoices that are totaling $69,170. Those are comprised of two invoices, one for Compass Project Management for $18,670, one from Doran Whittier for $50,500. This is for the financial period ending May 31st, 2020. Can I get a motion to approve? Second.
Second.
Okay, roll call. Ken.
Yes.
Brian.
Yes.
Allison.
Yes.
Chris isn't here. Sarah.
Yes.
John.
Yes.
Charlie and Pam are not here. Abby. Abby. Did we lose Abby?
No, I'm right here. Yes.
Oh, there you are. Okay. Nancy.
Yes.
Lemma.
Yes.
Josepha.
Yes.
Carol.
Yes.
Michelle and Tony are gone. Emily.
Yes.
Kate is gone, and Maya Plotkin approves. Motion is carried. Okay, is there any new business? Nope. All right, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call. Ken.
Yes.
Brian.
Yes.
Allison.
Yes.
Chris isn't here. Sarah.
Yes.
John.
Yes.
Charlie and Pam are not here. Abby.
Yes.
Nancy.
Yes.
Lemma.
Yes.
Josepha.
Yes.
Carol.
Yes.
Michelle and Tony not available. Emily.
Yes.
Kate's not here, and Maya Plotkin votes yes. Motion is carried. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Maya.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.